Hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen, music lovers and string quartet fans. Welcome to the second chapter of Ricercare, Quartets in Quarantine, a live four-part counterpoint in days of uncertainty. For all of those who were not in our first chapter last week, I will introduce myself. My name is Cibrán. I am violinist of Cuarteto Quiroga, Spanish string quartet. And the idea of this project occurred to me weeks ago while I was in the middle of the lockdown. And I was kind of, full of questions and reflecting upon these times of uncertainty. And I was far from my quartet colleagues and far from stages, from concert halls where we play, where we share with you, with the audience, with the fifth presence, so to say, this miracle of conversation in music, which is quartet. And then I thought that maybe we could actually transport this idea, this enlightened idea that gave birth to String Quartet, which is conversation in music, to kind of a similar counterpoint, four-part counterpoint, but this time without words, as we are inhabiting now times of musical silence. So throughout this series, which is generously hosted by the Biennale of Amsterdam, we will kind of create another form of quartet performance. So four voices from different quartets, all of them groups that are linked to the Amsterdam Quartet Biennale. We'll meet every week to discuss and to debate about music, about the context that we're living, and about the uncertain coming future and the role that string quartet might play, especially in turbulent times where critical and enlightened thinking is probably more needed than ever. And we will do it as we do it in concerts, listening, reacting to each other, and learning constantly from each other's difference, from each other's ideas, from each other's gestures, because we're sure, and I'm sure that now, especially these days, more than ever, it is important to realize and to underline that diversity is a treasure. So you're all welcome, of course, to post questions on social media, but and we will try to listen to them and to react to some of them. Unfortunately, maybe not all of them. But as we like to react on stage to audience, we would like also to react here. The name of this series is Ricercare, which stands from search, from experiment, from invention, from counterpoint, and this is a concept somehow that will lead these meetings, hoping that, like in a good concert, we will exit from the experience being somehow different as we were when we entered. We have today a fantastic, amazing lineup of guests. I'm really happy to welcome Mark Steinberg from the Brentano Quartet. Hello, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Cibrán. Thanks for having me.
We have Annette Walther from the Signum Quartet. Hello, Annette.
Hello, hi.
Wonderful to have you here. And we have also Hugo Ticciati from Modernt. Thank you for being here, Hugo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, just to start this conversation, just please let us know, all of us. I mean, how are you? I mean, how are you spending these days? How is being in a lockdown? How is being away from quartet? How is being away from performing and from stages? Is this triggering any kind of special relationship with you and music? Or is triggering your creativity in a different way? Are you practicing? You're not? Are you in silence? Are you noisy? What's your sensation nowadays? Who wants to start?
I don't know.
Mark, go.
Okay, well, yeah, I am practicing. It's only in the last couple days that I've been able to start practicing my quartet parts because I know that we'll have a chance to play together a little bit. It was just really painful for me, the idea of practicing music when I couldn't play with the others. So I practiced Bach and even Paganini, which I thought was really, for me, like the sign of the end of the world there. But it was great to connect with the violin. It kind of takes me to a place that I know inside, that I trust, and that means something to me. And I've also had the chance to connect through my students, which has been a mixed thing. It's wonderful to see them, and I've been surprised at how much we've been able to accomplish this way. And it gives me hope, and it keeps me interested in the process of learning through their eyes and through what I can share with them and what we can discover together. I'm also lucky because I live close to my quartet colleagues. So one of them I've only been able to see through video so far. We spent some time together. The other two live close enough that we can take walks together. And I do once a week with each of them because they're, of course, String Quartet is socially so much a part of my life as well. And that means a lot to me, just to see them and to spend some time together. Um, and to have in the background all that we've shared in music and all the sort of intimate and close ways that we've spent decades together at this point.
What about you guys?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, if I would continue, I would say it's everything you said. Actually, it was a mixture of all of us, of that. It was actually when it started this crazy time. It was like I felt like this is incredible because I always wanted to have. I was searching for a time where I could really experience like other rhythm and another kind of timing in my life, and it came not as I wanted it. Actually, I mean it was a shut down, a very crazy, but I was really. I thought this is incredible. What a gift, actually. It's also very nice because we had so intense times and everything seemed to be so full. And I really was, I enjoyed it very much starting with. And then, of course, it was crazy to see when everything was cancelled and everything was closed down and once this uncertainty where you don't know where it's going to but we were close in contact. We are not living together, the quartet, but we are in contact via mail and Skype and stuff, and had to discuss a lot of things also because we are in editing of recordings and stuff. But for myself, I enjoyed also to have this kind of close down for myself, to really be silent, to not to practice. Actually, I was playing a lot. I enjoyed playing, just trying out things and not really have to practice for things. And and a lot of questions came up, as you said already, like what is the life we are having? Why is it? What is so important? What do I like about it, and what maybe I don't like so much, and all these things. So it's such a rich time at the moment for me, and of course, it will have like the consequences we don't know yet. But I hope we can take also very much good things over to the time after. Yeah, because there is a lot of good things, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Hugo?
Thank you, Annette. Yes, I very much echo Annette's words. As soon as we entered into this period, it was this sort of sense of space and time, and this there's this exploring which one can come into, both internally, externally. And for me, I've spent my days basically half of it meditating, half of it practicing, and looking at scores, analysing, and a lot of dreaming. I've discovered the world of dreams, nocturnal dreams, and so this has been a great adventure. And again, it's just this sense that yes, well, who knows what's going to happen. I love this insecurity of not knowing, because a lot of the conditioning one's built up as a musician, just one has to release it. We live by so much habit as a musician, so much habit expectation. You just, in these times, you just got to say, all right, got to let all of that go, let down the armor, and then just be silent and then let it arise more naturally and not force anything into place, not rush back into anything. I think this is critical for me, and maybe for many musicians, is not the sense, we must rush back into how it was, but let things just grow up gently, and if they're going to take time, but there's going to be some beautiful things which arise. And I think if one maybe looks at the situation more existentially, whenever one looks back at one's life, it's the times of suffering and difficult times that are always the times of healing and catharsis and change. And although there's a lot of suffering now, on a sort of global perspective, I think it's also an incredible time of healing and a reset for humanity, where we offer this blessing of reflection And that, of course, one with a compassion and with all the deaths and all the suffering, there's this counterpart, this dialogue between the two that, yes, this is life. We all die, and so it gives us a chance to reflect on the big questions as well, which is, I think, very very special this time, as Annette and both saying.
I think somehow what you're pointing at the idea that we are somehow, because you're mentioning the word uncertainty, you're mentioning the word of before and after, so that we are kind of in a crossroad, and it always makes me think of the idea of this word that we're repeating over and over, which is crisis, 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 comes from the Greek krisis, which means actually a decision, and a division in the path. That we have this moment. And so, what do you think that this is a sign that somehow in our world, chamber music, things have to change somehow? Or I'm thinking, for example, in terms of, I think of your ensembles as really one of the most set of, that's what I wanted to have a conversation with the three of you, very creative in programming and approaching certain specific aspects of our form of making music. Should we do things differently from now on? Especially, should we be programming differently, understanding maybe concepts differently, talking about lengths, talking about liturgy of the concert itself, or approaching audiences differently, behaving differently as musicians? Or how do you feel?
Can I?
Should.
Maybe if we're going back to the idea of habit, I think if one looks at audience members and audience participation, when they come to a concert, there's an incredible amount of conditioning and habit instilled in the whole process of concert production, the whole listening. And I think what's the danger when there's been just this absolute overflow of music over the last decades, is just increased. There's just noise, continual noise, that the sensitivity and the active listening and the ability to be aware as you're listening as an audience member has diminished, and it becomes like a sort of a shot of yes, we have some great music, and we can sort of live on that cultural shot, as it were. But it felt a lot as though the dialogue had the danger of being lost in that respect. And I think as we grow out of this crisis, as you say, there's no return. It's a matter of awakening the audience to the presence of listening, so they can be there with us. And I think how we program is so critical, and there are so many ways of, I think, creating programs within chamber music to awaken that sense of activity, active awareness and presence. And for me, the silence is such an important element, and I think silence can be incorporated into concerts much more. Just have moments of silence. I'm not saying we all need to go around playing John Cage, which will be great as well, but a sense of just letting things be and letting things grow and letting things echo. As we were starting this discussion, we were complaining about echoes, and I can hear myself echoing now, but there's something beautiful about it. And I think concerts, they need to reverberate beyond the sounds, and I think they've become so much within a case, within an institution, within a way of thinking, that they haven't got the space to grow outside that. And then we're all stuck in that as players, as listeners. And I think programming is a lovely way of just breaking outside that and getting listeners really to be active again.
I mean, I think we are definitely echoing now in many possible ways. But someone is being called. But I wanted to also bring the idea that somehow, is this easy, what you're talking, Hugo, or how do you, Mark and Annette, do you find easy to discuss different initiatives with programmers, for example?
It's always a matter of, sorry.
There is a telephone there. sounding. Yeah.
I think it's getting more and more in this. I would also say it's not important to actually completely change everything or make a break with our habits completely. I think it's just something. It's a transition as just this time being where we are at the moment, and also in our kind of rituals and yeah, our connection with the audience. I think it is already, like, to make a link to to this wonderful Biennale in Amsterdam. I think these are the kind of future things where the audience get the chance to notice how important they are actually also for us, and how close we are with them, and how important the dialogue is, and that there are possibilities to really get in touch, not only via music and we are coming on stage and bow and play and then bye bye. This kind of new kind of formats where we are kind of not lecturing, or we are playing, they can ask something, we are more in contact in different ways. I think this is something which I also now have the feeling is really with all the streaming concerts and all the things. This is the critical point for me about this, because the echo of the audience, I don't get this so close, and this kind of energy we are sharing together, and all this is so important. And I think the more we get in touch, and really also the more we can involve them also in the processing and how we work, and what we are, that we are not only the people who are having the violin on and playing, that we are sharing our thoughts and all these things. I think this is coming more and more, and I really very much appreciate. And one little point I was thinking also, which is I think might change, because we really, or I think we really have to think about all this flying and traveling and all this stuff. Maybe the consciousness about getting more regional again, like, this doesn't mean provincial, like getting smaller, but to be really also connected with where we are coming from, and maybe create new or bigger networks also with musicians around us, and to make it even more diverse. I think this could be also something very interesting. I mean, I love this global network we have, and it's fantastic, and it's a big luxury and fun. But I think maybe it's not so natural that we can continue like that, like jetting around the world all the time, and just maybe there will be a little change also.
Probably.
Or it's worth thinking about, I think.
How do you see it, Mark?
Yeah, well, I wanted to say that I appreciate so much what everyone is saying, and I love what Hugo was saying about uncertainty and the virtues of uncertainty. And I think that happens on the big scale, and I think it also ideally happens on the small scale within the quartet, with the way we play together. And I think so often when we work on music, we rehearse and we try to set things in place and know they're going to work, know they're going to be together, know how are we moving toward this place, what have we decided, and we live in the decisions rather than always in the vulnerability of the many possibilities that could happen. And I think if we take that into our music making more and more, that's a really beautiful thing. In terms of connecting with audiences, that's, I'm of course, I have to say at this point, I have not yet gotten to the point where I miss being on stage. I miss horribly being able to make music with other people. And I'm sure eventually I will miss getting to share it with an audience also. But I think often I think about what we do less as a presentation or a giving over to an audience what we're doing, and more as if we're creating something with great intimacy and intensity, and people get to eavesdrop on that. And if there's the right kind of intensity between us, people will be drawn in and want to hear. And I think that's the same kind of situation we can set up with our programming sometimes, by making certain juxtapositions, either with other pieces that reflect off what we're doing, or shine a different light on them, or incorporating other art forms, poetry, visual arts, all sorts of things, so that there are reflections back and forth, and we sort of just open up up space for people to listen. Some of my favorite programs put together are programs where I feel like we're inviting people to notice how they listen and how they process things, rather than I don't know, try not to be too academic about it and say, oh, this is why these things are together, but just sort of present them and see what happens. And again, that's again going back to this kind of idea of uncertainty, which is so scary and so beautiful at the same time.
We are 4 players here from, and I guess we've all been sometimes in this situation where we're trying to present an idea, which is, tries to put in connection works in a different way, or shine a light, as you were saying, from a different perspective. And we like this idea of uncertainty and of exploring a sensation that has not been explored, maybe just by combining pieces that normally might not, apparently at least, fit together. And I feel probably that if I say that I've experienced many times that on the other side of the line, the question is, I'm a promoter, I'm a presenter. I cannot play with uncertainty, I have to play with certainties. I need to sell tickets, and you give me Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, and stop there, How do you guys feel that we can change that? I mean, how when you get that kind of answer and you're trying to present one of the great programs that you do as groups, how do you go and say, look, listen, I mean, I think you're making a mistake there. I mean, I think you're probably going to involve more people and you're going to impact more people if you let me combine this with this, or look at this thing in this other way, How do you do?
I think for one thing, I wouldn't say to someone that they're making a mistake, because in my view, it's never a mistake to hear some Haydn, Mozart.
Definitely.
And I actually don't mind playing programs like that at all. I love it. But at the same time, I think that we need to just bring our enthusiasm, bring our hopes and our dreams to people, and ask them to be a participant in the exploration in a way. And I don't know. In my own experience, I feel like I only push so hard. I try to present what I think could be beautiful, what I think affords an opportunity for people who might not be interested in the standard program to get curious and come. That it's always tricky when you feel like you're alienating some audience members. That's easy to see, audience members who always come, and sometimes we underestimate what people are willing to come and explore. But it also is sometimes turning a blind eye to the untold numbers of people who haven't yet felt there's anything for them there, and maybe there's some curiosity that hooks them into a different kind of exploration.
What do you guys, how do you?
Yeah, and we also, we actually noticed, I mean, this is not a new thing, but that when you talk with the people about it a bit, if you try to explain a bit, or if you say tell the organizer, we will introduce it a bit and we will talk about with the audience about it, then normally we have actually mainly good experiences with this. And we have Xandi, our viola player, had this great idea of this little pieces, this quartets, and so which is really amazing because they're super short, but and you can tweet them via Twitter, and we try them out, and you have like a little amuse girl, like a little taste of something, and it's very short, and nobody has to be afraid of it, and we made this experience that people really like it, or they at least say, oh, it's actually not that bad, or I wouldn't have experienced or expected this. So these are things. I mean, of course, there are organizers who just say, this is not for me. We have to accept this. But I actually have the feeling it's getting more and more open for these things. This is what we actually...
Hugo?
Yeah.
I think the question about doing interesting programs asks a deeper question, is why do we need to do them? And it goes slightly circling back what we were saying before. It's not for the sake of an innovative program, but it's for the sake of awakening an active listening, a real awakening someone. And one can do that just as well with Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven. The question is how. And I think an easy way of doing it, in a way, is weird and wacky programming. Suddenly play Beethoven, it's going to sound very different. But I think for me, it ultimately goes back to a question of an authenticity in playing, and being true to oneself as one's playing, as a group. And it goes back to what Mark was saying about vulnerability. And one can awaken that listening within anyone with the most standard program there's ever been. But it's, I think, more challenging. I think it's easier to get people out of the habit of passive listening by doing weird things in a program than by just playing the standards. So I think it's more of a challenge, but you can do the same thing. And I think you need to actually ask a deeper question: why are we doing these? And Modernt, that's what I do all the time. It's a slightly weird program, but it's not the programming per se, which I'm actually very interested in. It's the essence of what it can just nudge people in the right direction, help them, and then they can go back to listening to only Beethoven and Mozart and Haydn, but they'll listen in a totally different way for the rest of their lives, because they might hate the modern concert.
I have this experience, which is fantastic about what you're saying. I was programming this series in Spain years ago, and then came this quartet, the metafoor from Finland, and they played among other things. They played it because I was asking everyone, please just bring something which is absolutely out of the ordinary, together with whatever you like, but with something. And they brought this piece by a Finnish composer, and this lady, who is a very conservative listener, which I known for many years, came to me after the concert, after the performance of this piece, and she said something which I found amazing, which it links somehow to this awakening. She said to me, Cibrán, I never thought I could love that much something that ugly. So, I mean, she was not able to recognize or see a certain beauty in it but she was thrilled about it, So, and I think somehow this is a fantastic kind of shaking a listener in a very specific way. And do you think, for example,
can I just add that the point is that Beethoven, Mozart should do that every time.
Every time, yeah.
But the problem is that we're just habitually, we've heard it so many times, and that's why we have to recreate programming. So suddenly these absolute gems, which every time you just go, whoa, that is out there. But to do that, you just need to play in a way. It's yeah. But it's going back to what you were saying.
Even with them, for example, what do you think about? Because I think that habits, when we go now back to playing Beethoven or Brahms or Haydn, our interpretation habits, part of civilization, somehow that is collapsing, or should we somehow also approach, understand or translate the idea of a surprise, a rhetorical surprise, in a way that it's still perceived nowadays as a rhetorical surprise, and not just, oh, yeah, I've heard this interval so many times. I mean, where to find the balance between, between not coming up with crazy ideas, which are absolutely on top of the music, and still bring authenticity to like rhetorical gestures, which were a surprise in the 18th century, but maybe not anymore nowadays. Mark, you were nodding somehow.
Well, because you're just bringing up the everything. This is the whole part of what we do, right? This is what it's about. Like, how do we get inside these things and reanimate them? And I often talk to people about this. I don't know if you know this Borges story, Pierre Menard, author of Don Quixote, where this man wants to rewrite Don Quixote. It's already been written, and he sort of has these two choices. His book, he can copy it out, or he can do the second choice, which is basically he wants to live his life in such a way that the words that already happen to be Don Quixote spontaneously come out of him again as an expression of who he's grown to be. And I often think that this is what we do, right? It's like you can take option A, you know, you have the score of the Beethoven quartet, there it is, you can copy it, you can read it off the page, or you can go and find what it is in yourself that makes it so that what you're experiencing, what you're remembering, what you're feeling can only happen to be expressed by what happens to be on the page there.
Yeah, and
Yes.
sometimes maybe being faithful is not being literal, no? Or very often,
It's
I guess, no?
Yeah.
we say are you obeying the letter of the law or the spirit of the law?
The spirit.
That is,
And I think for performers
Yeah.
also, one might play an incredibly complex modern piece, and suddenly when then plays a C major chord at the beginning and that C major chord is suddenly going to go, whoa, and the spine tingles. And if it does for us as musicians and we're open, the audience will experience that. So I think the programming is as much for us to reinvigorate those pieces. And of course, in a sense, we need a ness. But maybe more. Who knows that we're actually playing it every day, the same thing. Just we need to love that C major chord like it's the first time we've ever heard it.
You've heard it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess that it's this conflict is constantly tricky. And I mean, how do you feel, for example, when you know the debate comes about people, audiences should be how to bring in young audiences, and is this something that has to do or with the way we play, or is something which has to do again with social habits that are beyond our scope of action as interpreters?
I think it can be both a little bit.
Yes.
I think part of it is also just sometimes it's the venues in which we play. It's whether people can feel the energy as if they're inside the group. I mean, getting people to the concert in the first place is tough. But once they're there, we also have a responsibility. Sorry, Annette, please.
No. I was interrupting you. Sorry. Yeah. No. I just think also it's the rituals we are having about this kind of habits, and I think adding what we said before. I think this translation work, like what we have to do, translate it in our time. I think this is something which means also to us opening more to. I think we are so often also addressing. I mean, I'm repeating a bit what we said before, but I think this is so important that we are. Who are we? To whom are we addressing with what we are doing? And I think this is the more we are opening up, I think the more people we are reaching also. So and I think going out of these normal places and opening up for different kind of forms of concerts, I think this might be helpful.
You mentioned the word ritual, and I think ritual is one of the most wonderfully powerful things that we have as a culture. But rituals, as soon as they become empty of the spirit, become these structures that then just obstruct. And I think that's what the tendency very quickly for rituals to become rules, to become etiquette, become structure, and then you think, well, why were they there in the first place? And I think one always has to go back to the essence of why a ritual is there. And then, okay, you doesn't have to have the same ritual, but you understand the essence of it, and then everything grows from there. And all religion, is the same thing. You have this incredible spirit that drives, and then dogma, and then rituals accrue around this essence to help you understand it, to help you appreciate it. But then very quickly, the rituals get divorced from why they are there, and they become they become empty. And I think, so I think the ritual of a classical concert is also, there's something so spiritual and sacred about that and beautiful, but it has to have the essence of why we're actually doing it.
I think
what makes... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that there's also, in terms of bringing different audience members, there's a certain amount of peace or calm that you need to receive what a string quartet does often. And it's something that people often have a little more space for later in their lives. But I've been thinking about this a little bit the last few days because, of course, here in the U.S. we're in a very terrible situation right now, dealing with the issues of racism, which are such a big part of our society, and now things are erupting around this. And it's something that's very easy to see in black and white. People say, "Oh, I'm not a racist. This person is," but the capacity to listen, really listen to the nuances of what people are saying, is I feel like that's what we need as a nation right now. To stop and be quiet and listen, and that's what happens in a string quartet, ideally. And if people can be brought to that, I don't know. I have hopes that it can be something that inspires our way of being with each other.
Yeah.
Somehow this idea, I mean, that quartet was, I mean, it really became popular when in the beginning of its appearance in the historic scene, because it was a really powerful democratic tool of listening, among equals somehow. And how can we somehow break this topos of that was created, I think, especially after Beethoven's last quartets, of complex music, which remained throughout the Romantic period until probably the 20th century. How can we break this topos of elitism, of a music that is hard to listen, and go back to a music or a form of making music that actually is including the audience in a way, very obvious way, and including the element of listening? How we're saying, how to, I mean, and do you think that somehow, because I think this is going to help the situation that we're living now, that probably symphonic concerts will be harder to happen? And do you think, however, is this going to be easier or harder?
Maybe a thought on getting rid of the elitist sense behind quartet playing. That's where single movement concerts, radical programming, combining with lots of different genres, and having a quartet and then a singer coming on and doing something else, and a rap artist, whatever. But really to demonstrate that the quartet has something to offer within a diverse culture, and it has something very unique and special, but at the same time it's not just reserved for this little segment, but rather, and there I think one needs to step outside the box dramatically when it comes to programming and combine. One can do little movements, one can stop in the middle of the movement and say, well, did that feel good? No, we need to continue. We need to continue the story. And people begin to say, yeah, this is a story, this is a drama. So that, I think, where a more radical approach to programming can come, and not as an end in itself, but as a process of incorporation.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think if we make it happen that people notice that it has something to do with every one of us. It seems so abstract, but actually it's the innerest things, like the most intimate things everybody is connected with, or it's the, I don't know, it's the main point. Everyone, it's about the human being, and if people realize or experience this, if we make it happen that it's possible, I think you gave already kind of the ways how to make it experienceable, like short and programs and things. But if it's possible to make it to touch the people with this kind of points, and that they feel this is actually concerning myself,
I think
it's not nothing abstract.
I've always loved, in a concert, especially when you play Haydn, and you're playing a concert and you're playing kind of one of these dramatic changes of keys or silence, which are absolutely unpredicted, and then there's this crowd that goes like, immediately claps, and then everyone goes like, shh, and it's like, no, I mean, he was done right. That's what I mean. I'm happy
Yes.
always, because I feel we kind of did it well, I mean, we managed, we led them into the trap, which Haydn had set for them. And this feeling that, how to again instigate audiences to really be again participants, in the
Yes.
in the speech. It's hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a fascinating thought. Also, for example, how do you somehow feel that when when you want to? I felt many times that we wanted to explain something about the audience, and sometimes I've been told, our audience doesn't need any kind of explanation from you. When you want to talk something, or introduce the piece or something. Have you ever been in that situation?
I think
I never ask. I just talk.
That's right. But you think it is helpful sometimes. Mark, you were going to say.
I think. Sorry, Mark. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's often really helpful to people that you talk, and sometimes it's not even what you say. It's that you talk and that you share some kind of enthusiasm or connection, because human beings are curious about other human beings. I mean, I've also had that just of the string quartet form as a whole. I've had, people that I meet in other walks of life that never go to a classical music concert, and because I've met them, I invite them to a concert and they come, and sometimes they're really hooked and they're surprised that I had no idea this was there. And so sometimes this human connection is the way into the artistic connection.
Yeah, you mentioned curiosity, which I think is the essence of life.
Absolutely.
We've got to wake up and be curious. What is this day going to give me? What's this Beethoven going to give me? What's this tree going to give me? And I think, somehow our role as artists, we are by definition, we're driven by our curiosity, and we've got to infect everyone with that curiosity.
Planting the seed of curiosity. That's the task. But it's one feels all the time so challenged by habits, as you were saying before, Hugo. I think, and this is really hard to manage. I don't know.
And it's also balanced with habits, because they're also what creates a genre. It's what creates a quartet. It's habit. It's like the repetition with difference. Nothing is ever the same. You brush your teeth every morning. It's a habit. But every time you brush it, if you were 100% present at that moment of brushing, that could be a divine moment. And it's going to be different every morning, because it's filled with everything that's ever happened in your life. So I think that this curiosity, habit, breaking down of habits, that's where, as artists, we are just called again and again to question, to think, to experience.
And do you think these problems we're talking about sometimes about, which is actually also keeping fresh in a way with your performance, and you coming back to what we were saying before about, has to do also with an obsession of being over polished with our interpretations nowadays? And how the hell can we get out of that box with all the culture that we have of perfection with CDs and all these, and the pressure, and how do you manage that situation?
I think that's true, and I think a big part of it is developing and noticing trust with the music, trust with your own relationship with the music, trust with your colleagues. And this idea of ossifying things to make sure they're okay or to make sure that they're proper is very, very dangerous to making art. And some of it's ego and some of it's other things. I mean, I know for one, for example, I've traditionally had a really hard time recording. I haven't enjoyed the process. It's been really tough for me, and to play and go listen back and hear this thing I wish I didn't do. And now I don't listen back ever. And I'm not saying I'm great at recording, but I'm a little better, because whatever I lose, I feel like I don't play perfectly. I don't need anyone to think that I do. But I want to make music, and I get inhibited by the way the microphone is listening, the way I perceive that the microphone is listening. And I think in general, the more we want to look for things that are beautifully crafted, but also changeable, malleable, capricious in some way, so that anything could happen at any moment, and we feel the danger and the risk and the possibility.
Yeah. No, sorry. I just want to say this. For me, it's also the magic combination of trust and uncertainty. This is what actually can lead the way out of this kind of perfection stuff. Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah, and one to add to that, maybe it's also an acceptance of one's weaknesses, and to actually to embrace the fact, that one's not perfect as a human, as a player, and by humbly accepting one's limitations, I think one allows the audience, because there's this sort of the hierarchy that we often find is that these the people up on stage who have perfected everything, they've spent their years, and we're here, we're in the B category, we're in the listeners. I think that you can get into that dialogue, whereas I think if as performers we're humble enough and can let go of the ego and say we've got weaknesses as well, we mess up, and actually let that happen in the moment. The audience can relate to us, and then and then there's this again awakening of this sort of sense that we're on the journey with them. It's not like these perfect people and one day or in many lifetimes. No, actually they're the fallibility up on stage. I think that's the most beautiful thing. And
Yes.
it is that.
Fragility.
The fragility.
The
Fragility.
fragility.
That's
That's the
no,
word.
somehow,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think there's always been this conception of ever since sort of Liszt and Paganini and the virtuosos. So what wasn't like that before, I'm sure, is an audience looking at an artist on a tightrope.
Yeah.
And part of the excitement is the possibility that they could fall. And I personally don't think that's a positive relationship. I think it's based on a full sense of ego, and I think actually we need to be walking down the beach together, sharing. And I think how do we create that democracy of being, of musicking in a hall? It's so difficult because we've got to shed ourselves and think, look, I'm flawed. I got massive problems just like you have. Let's work through them, through the music together. We're not on a tightrope having perfected it in any way, because we're all flawed. You might happen. You're a fantastic violinist. You can lead this quartet, but if you get into a bus, you're just like anyone else struggling with life. But I think we're lucky and got that gift. Through music, we can journey with people, looking at our weaknesses, looking at our fallibility.
Beautiful. So we have to start, closing everything. I would be here talking with you for ages. This is absolutely fascinating and actually a very necessary and inspiring talk that we should. I think these ideas should come up on stages and with people that are organizing concerts and helping this situation more often, I think, somehow. But we have to come to an end, and there are some questions that popped out. Maybe we don't have time for everything, but one of them says from one of our listeners, he's writing, is there anything specific you would want to know from another quartet in these times? I don't know what this person exactly means, but what would you say? Or is there anything that, are you curious, coming back to curiosity about any specifics from another quartet? We're not really.
Can we expand it to musician, or does it have to be a quartet?
Well, you expand it to whatever you like. Go ahead.
Annette, you were about to answer possibly about quartet. Right?
No, sorry, because I couldn't say. I'm very curious about this question we were just discussing about, and how this time is changing the thinking, and if it's opening more, like including different aspects of life. If there's kind of also. Do you want to continue like you did before in private life and quartet life, but not specific one quartet? I would ask. I just want to know from, yeah.
What was your line of thought, Hugo?
Well, I think it was a lot to do with what Annette's saying. Is more generally, how do we see our roles as artists forward, and what can we learn from it? And what have you learned from it? And it could be a quartet. What have they learned? But I think it's an incredibly important time to share what we've all individually felt we've learned and create a culture of that new learning. So we start with our subjective experience and bring it into the intersubjective. And out of that, we possibly come into a new paradigm for making music, a new paradigm for how music is understood in society. But also, I think maybe it's going beyond asking quartet members, asking audience members, what have they missed most? What is it that they're thirsting for? And again, have a dialogue. And again, I think it's wonderful to have the four of us talking, but maybe one can have a dialogue, two audience members, two quartet members. And again, have that at a conversational level, really go back to the roots and integrate the art form within a dialogue of society.
I think that this imposed hiatus has a little bit shown what we take for granted in terms of being able to share things, both within a quartet, between quartets and audiences, and even for myself, reflecting back not very long ago to think about what I appreciated and what fell into the background for me. And so coming back, I mean, I know that, there are two things that are going to make me cry coming up. One is being able to hug another member of my family, and the other is to mix my sounds with other people in the quartet. And I think there will be a lot of beauty that comes out of noticing afresh things that we were lucky enough to take for granted for a long time.
Yeah,
That's for sure. Well, right.
Yeah. Can I just on hugging?
Yes.
I think I'm going to have a festival concert next year, which will be devoted to hugging, to compensate.
Can I come?
Anyone feels they've had a lack of hugs can come to the festival. It's going to be a whole day dedicated.
I love it.
Oh, that's fantastic. The hug. So, well, I want to thank you very much. I posed them a question to the other group, which I thought maybe would be fun. Either to make a compilation of through these conversations of music for these times. Is there any music that has been with you these days, especially, or any piece that you would discover and that you think it kind of relates to what we're living nowadays, or not specific?
I mean, maybe as we were editing or working a lot now on Schubert, I would say Schubert is the perfect composer for these times, because he really shows how to deal with uncertainty and how far you can go and how important it is. But nothing not really specific. No.
What about you guys?
Mark, are you?
I tell you, my choice is silence. I mean, in a way, somehow, I've never listened to silence
That's
as much
true.
as I've been doing it these days. In a way, so fulfilling. So, which it's actually make me feel music in a different way, probably. I don't know. And I think we don't have, maybe we don't have, like Benjamin said, we don't have time to get bored anymore.
For me, silence.
Yeah.
Silence would be the answer.
Yeah, silence.
It reminds me of that the piece by Stockhausen when he came back to his house and his wife had left and he was under his piano there for 4 days, not eating, not sleeping, in total sort of despair. And then he played one note on the piano and it did transform. It just became this cosmic note. And I have, a little hope that the cosmic sounds will arise out of the silence if we've allowed ourselves to live it, allowed ourselves really not to fill it up. Our danger as humans is we try and, as soon as there's a vacancy and emptiness, we try and fill it as opposed to letting it be. And I think this is the time to let it be. So I think that silence is the best medicine.
It's something beautiful if we don't try to press music into service to do something for us at this moment, but wait for it to reveal itself.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh,
Beautiful.
yes.
So thank you very much. Really, thanks to the three of you. Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Thanks, Hugo. Thanks,
Thank
Annette.
you.
It's really been wonderful. And I am really sorry to cut this because it would be fantastic to open a glass of wine and continue for hours. But another time. So take care. Thank you very much. Thank you also to the String Quartet Biennale of Amsterdam for hosting this idea and for everyone
thank you.
joining and listening to four quartet crazy people talking about about music and silence. Thank you very much. Stay healthy and take care.
Yes, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Thank you.
So good to see you.
So good to see you all.